Welcome to No Filter Doctor, where we cut through the health hype and dig into what's real, what works, and what's backed by evidence. I'm Dr. AK. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to talk about natural, I say that in air quotes, supplements. I have a lot of patients who present me with this long list of supplements and they tell me, well, it's natural, so it's safe. Avoiding big pharma and different prescription medications because, quote, they are not natural. So they revert to a lot of these like over-the-counter supplements and vitamins, and they think I can understand why, it's natural. But what does that mean? How are these things regulated? Is it actually safe? So these are the things we're going to get into today. Before we dive into those, however, I do just want to send a huge thank you out to all of you who have been listening. So full disclosure, I'm not recording this on the same day it's being released because, well, I don't even know how to do that. But we are about 1 month out from the time of this recording of launching the podcast, and I've had over 100 downloads, which apparently in the podcasting analytics world is a very big deal. So thank you for following along. Thank you for downloading, and thank you for being here with me because, I kind of don't really know what I'm doing in terms of podcasting, and so you are all validating me, and I appreciate it. All right, on to some supplements now. You all know that I have this love-hate relationship with the internet, right? Like, the internet is great because you have all of this access to information, but the problem is there is so much misinformation floating around, especially when it comes to anything medical, health, wellness. There are all kinds of people saying all kinds of stuff. And in that is this natural supplement and that, treatments are safe. And the truth is these are just misconceptions. So I am board certified. I've had years of medical training. I don't get any kickbacks or bonuses from big pharma. It's just, you can actually look it up. You can go online and see how much money your doctor has received from a pharmaceutical company. I think in 2017, I got $11.25, and I didn't even get that. I ate a meal at a presentation from a pharmaceutical company. I don't get anything from big pharma, but I do like medications that require prescriptions because there is so much oversight for those medications. And when we're talking about supplements, there is virtually no oversight. I don't want to say none, but it's very limited. And so some of these things can be extremely dangerous. Additionally, just because it's natural doesn't mean it's safe. And we're going to get into that a little bit more. But first, let's talk about the industry because we know where money is, that's where the marketing is, and that's where some of this nonsense comes from. So I think it's really important that all of you understand the supplement industry. It is true that certain foods are favorable in terms of their health properties. So for example, let's talk about legumes like your beans and peas, right? They provide an abundance of fiber. A lot of them have protein. We know that eating them is associated with a lower risk of heart disease. So the industry, this supplement industry, takes this data, let's say about legumes, and grinds them up into some processed version, and then they make over $100 billion annually in these sales. Not specifically legume concoctions, but all kinds of different vitamins and supplements. So $100 billion annually is on the line here. It's really important to know that, again, because the enemy is not necessarily the health industry. The enemy is the fact that people are greedy and they want to make a ton of money off of these things. So greed is a driving force. The bonus to all of this is those supplement companies are not only cashing in, but they're doing so with minimal regulation. And that's really what's terrifying. And that is the major defining line between these medications and things that have received an FDA clearance. So the U.S. Food and Drug Administration categorizes supplements as a product taken orally that contains a dietary ingredient intended to supplement the diet, right? That's pretty vague. And while they're not permitted to make unsubstantiated claims to cure illness or benefit health, they can make those claims if there's some shred of evidence to support the claim. You may recall Airborne. Well, its makers were sued by the FTC in a class action suit for making unsubstantiated claims that their supplement could prevent or cure colds. And earlier this year, Zicam settled another lawsuit that made similar claims. They said that their product will shorten colds. And there was no reliable scientific backing in either of these, so they got sued and they had to pay out. But the way these FDA regulations are kind of written, there's a lot of room to stretch the truth. So if there's some kind of study that showed a little bit of evidence to support something, then the companies can make certain claims. So let's stick with zinc here because that was what the main ingredient was in Zicam that made them make the claims about the common cold. So zinc is involved in a protein structure called a zinc finger. Yes, that is what it's called. And it is involved with RNA synthesis and gene transcription for the immune system. And so while you can't say zinc will shorten your cold, because that is an unproven claim, you can say it supports a healthy immune system. It boosts immune defenses against colds and flus. And there's a whole bunch of kind of general vague claims that they can make, like it detoxifies your body, it flushes toxins. These are just kind of all of the different things that are out there in terms of the vague claims that can be made. So there is some scientific data, a little bit, and then the companies can use this kind of nebulous language and make these claims on their packaging. They're completely allowed to, whether it's true or not. The other thing that you need to know is they get another kind of hall pass, and it is a very specific statement that the Food and Drug Administration requires these companies to put on their packaging, and it is, and I got this from the FDA website, this statement has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. It has to be anywhere on the packaging, doesn't matter where. So you can see here, had Zicam just said, hey, we boost your immunity, and had that statement written somewhere on the packaging, then they may have not gotten in trouble and they would not have had to pay out. So it's very gray when it comes to these supplements and vitamins and, the different requirements and regulations. The other issue with, quote, natural supplements is natural is not even defined. The FDA doesn't define it. There is no kind of pharmaceutical standard for natural. There is no food standard for natural. I talk about that in one of the blogs where we talk about processed foods. But it's not defined. It's a very nebulous statement. So all of these, quote, natural supplements, that is an undefined word. So while you're probably thinking oh, this is minimally processed, this is coming directly from the source, that's probably what you're thinking in your head. None of that is true. It is very processed. It is not coming from the actual source. It may be some kind of extract. And the super duper kicker on top of all of that is it may very well be contaminated with heavy metals. This is true. There are multiple studies that have demonstrated that a lot of these vitamins and supplements can have heavy metal contamination in them. In fact, there's a consumer report that just came out in October, a couple days ago actually, it was October 14th, that talked about lead in protein powders. So again, whey protein, pretty natural. Whey protein in powder form in a bag, not natural, heavily processed, and can be contaminated with heavy metals. So these are all the things that have to be taken into consideration when choosing a route of supplements. You have to know that, quote, there is no definition of natural. buying one of these doesn't mean it's not processed. Because they're poorly regulated, who knows what's in some of them? And then they can make these claims as long as they kind of hover beneath these very, very loose FDA requirements. The other thing, which actually may be the most important thing to mention, is that natural does not equal safe. There are plenty of things in nature that are quite deadly and are going to hurt you, like an amanita mushroom, for example. Quite detrimental to your liver, will probably require a liver transplant if you eat one. Not safe. The foxglove plant. The medication, the heart medication digoxin, comes from the foxglove plant. You want to eat a bunch of foxglove? You will die because your heart will stop beating. Not safe. Morphine came from poppy. Opium, heroin, comes from poppy. Not safe. These are all things that you can overdose on. I mean, even an apricot pit. Let's say you walk to a tree, it's there, it's not processed. You pick an apricot, you eat said delicious apricot, and then for whatever reason you are inclined to eat its pit. If you eat enough of those pits, you're going to get cyanide toxicity. So everything aside, with everything that I told you about supplements, just because something comes from nature, it does not mean it is safe. This is a false narrative. This is a misconception. And we have to kind of erase that from our brain. It's like we got trained into thinking, oh, it's natural, it's safe. No, these are incorrect. Drug interactions are also a concern whenever you're taking supplements. Garlic is a great example. So there's evidence that garlic can reduce cholesterol. I don't know how good the evidence is. I've read some of these studies. They're kind of like observational. Whatever. We're not going to get into the details about that. We're just going to use this as an example. Garlic and lowering cholesterol. Well, a lot of people who have heart disease, say some other kind of heart condition where they have to be on a blood thinner, probably also need to be on a cholesterol medication. And that individual might think, hey, I have a great idea. Let me take garlic. Well, garlic also thins your blood. So if you're on a blood thinner and you're taking garlic, you have the risk of bleeding very significantly and severely. And nobody really shares this with their doctors. I've had patients in the past that I've seen in the emergency department who have come in with major problems because they're mixing and matching medications and supplements. Like, I had no idea that valerian root and skullcap mixed together cause liver failure. I found out when I had a patient who did that. I genuinely hope that I have adequately driven home the point that natural supplements are neither, quote, natural, nor are they safe because they are natural. So now what, right? I do take supplements, right? I'm not going to make it sound like supplements are the enemy, but there is a way to approach these to kind of protect yourself and make sure that you're not getting hurt. The first thing is, please tell your doctor if you are on any of these supplements. 30% of you will not share that information with your doctor or anyone in your healthcare team, and that is dangerous because we talked about drug interactions. So let's start with that. Let's spread the word to the people who are responsible for our health what supplements we've decided to take. The next step is, when you do want to buy these, make sure that you're purchasing them from reputable companies. Forbes published an article that there's a link to the article in the blog, and I'll have that in the show notes for the podcast. But they went through a bunch of different companies and they looked at different brands and vetted them out and made some recommendations. And so I would look at that. The other thing is, look for the USP verified mark. So there are several third-party testing companies that will go through and test all of these products. And the United States Pharmacopoeia is the most trusted one. Whenever you see the USP verified mark, which is simply just the letters USP with a circle around them, that indicates that whatever this product has listed on the contents, that's actually what's in the product. So you can trust that. It doesn't contain any harmful levels of contaminants, so those like heavy metals and everything that we were talking about. And it was made at a facility that follows very strict quality manufacturing practices. I fully admit that I do take some supplements and vitamins, and I look for that USP verified mark on everything that I purchase. And the very last thing is proceed with a little bit of caution in terms of some of the claims that are made for all of these supplements, right? Remember the stem cell post that we talked about, and I said how much money the companies were making? We already talked about this is a $1 billion industry. These companies really want to make money. They're going to make claims. And I got to be honest with you, almost none of this stuff is tested in humans. We have no idea whether these things do the things that they say that they do. A lot of this stuff is initially discovered on yeast and earthworms and mice. They're not even kind of really advanced eukaryotes, which is what we are. We're very advanced eukaryotes. So you don't even know that these things are doing what they claim in the human body. So just pause. If you see something on the internet that's trending and everybody's doing it and everybody's making these like huge claims of grandeur about how great it works, I want to know how much they're getting paid, because I guarantee someone is paying them because the evidence is really not there to support all of it. I think if you follow these general rules and have a discussion with your healthcare team about your supplements and things that you're thinking, you can feel pretty safe and confident in the decisions that you're making. Thank you so much for joining me this week on No Filter Doctor. What you do need to keep in mind is that while I am a doctor, I'm not your doctor. So anything that we discuss on this podcast is not medical advice. And listening to this podcast does not establish a doctor-patient relationship. The purpose of this podcast is for information purposes only. Any questions or decisions that you want to make about your healthcare should be discussed with your doctor or other healthcare provider. Making healthcare decisions without discussing it first with your doctor or other healthcare provider is done so at your own risk.